This is something that happened. We don't know all the details, we don't know who was behind it, but QAnon did happen. Between 2017 and 2020, leading up to the election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, someone using the codename Q began posting information online. They used the name Q because they claimed to have a Q-level security clearance, which is the top secret clearance used by the Department of Energy. The best explanation I've heard of QAnon was from Jacob Chansley, who became known as the QAnon shaman.
I don't know what QAnon is. All I know about QAnon is they say you're a QAnon person, and they say that QAnon's a right-wing thing, and the only time I ever hear about it is on CNN.
Let's break this down. Q is a psychological operation. In order for mass formation hypnosis to occur, that 25 to 30% of the population has to gain some sort of heightened level of radicalism where they scream the loudest and then they get a hold of the levers of power, right? Now, when it comes down to stopping this process from happening, all you need is 5% or more of the population to not become hypnotized and say, no, this is ludicrous, you are nuts, we are not doing that. Now, we've seen the effects of mass formation hypnosis, critical factor bypass, and neurolinguistic programming in Nazi Germany. We saw it with the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia and the USSR. We saw it in the Red Revolution in China and the Chinese Communist Party, okay? So we've seen the effects of this process, and it is psychological warfare.
What he is saying is that he believes that QAnon was a reaction to Operation Mockingbird. Operation Mockingbird is well documented. We know it existed. It was a CIA program to influence the US mainstream media. In 2013, Obama signed a law called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. Within the scope of normal CIA operations, they create propaganda materials for foreign countries. This new law removed restrictions so that the US government could now share these materials with the US media. People will criticize this claim by saying that we don't know for sure if the CIA is doing this. And that is true. We have no idea what the CIA is doing. I cannot point to any specific examples of people at ABC or CBS who are spewing government propaganda. But it is in the law. You can go read it for yourself. We just don't know to what extent it is happening.
So Q is this person who's posting questions.
I don't think it's a person. I think it's a group.
So Q is a group that's posting questions on fora like 4chan or this other
Acun,
one.
yeah.
Acun. And you're saying that is a psyop from the highest levels of government.
Or I would say most likely highest levels of the military.
Okay.
Because military intelligence and the intelligence community tend to work together.
Sure.
Now, what led me to that conclusion is the numerical code in the Q drops themselves and the gap code between the time that Trump would tweet something and Q would do a Q drop, and what is called the Q clock. What the Q drops were doing was very, very similar to the way military intelligence communicates. And this is how it is that you're able to communicate a message in plain sight without the enemy knowing what exactly it is that you're saying, because it's all encrypted, it's all encoded.
This is the story of QAnon. The CIA was using Project Mockingbird. They were feeding propaganda to the media in an attempt to influence the election for Joe Biden. Military intelligence responded with QAnon to try and influence the election for Donald Trump. These were competing psychological operations aimed at the American people, allegedly. We all know what happened in 2020. The mainstream media announced Joe Biden was the winner of the 2020 presidential election. The people listening to QAnon believed the election was stolen. This resulted in the protests at the Capitol. What I am saying is that I believe that all of this was orchestrated by the intelligence agencies, and we, the American people, are the victims. If you do not believe me, let me remind you of something. There is roughly 2 months between Election Day in November and when the new president takes office in January. During this period, Donald Trump made very few public appearances. In fact, in 2 months, he only made 5 public appearances. One of those appearances was to go to West Point for the Army football game on December 12th, 2020. This is very interesting in hindsight, given what we know. I want you to watch this footage and tell me what you see. Does this look like a man who was just defeated in an election? Because it looks to me that this is Donald Trump telling the Army that no matter who is in the White House, that he is still the Army's president for the next 4 years. What do you think? Because I think that it is telling that out of the few public appearances that Trump makes, he decides to go to the Army football game. And then we saw what happened during Joe Biden's inauguration. They brought in the National Guard to lock down Washington, D.C. And as Joe Biden's motorcade was driving through the city, large numbers of the military were turning their backs to the president's car. Now, when this video started going viral, a spokesperson for the National Guard released an official statement saying that the troops were not turning their backs in protest. These National Guardsmen were on duty with a mission to protect the president against potential threats. Some are facing out to ensure the safety of all. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. If there is anyone who knows about the military, do these soldiers look like they are facing away because they are looking for danger? Now, I know that people are going to criticize me in this video for getting into conspiracies, but I don't think I'm saying anything that is too far-fetched. 1. The military convinced Donald Trump to run for president. 2. There's infighting among intelligence agencies. 3. People within the military wanted to influence the election. 4. Charlie Kirk and Tyler Boyer have a strange photo flashing hand signs. 5. There is evidence Turning Point was violating election laws. 6. There is evidence of financial irregularities at Turning Point. 7. Turning Point has multiple employees with connections to Fort Huachuca. And 8. Fort Huachuca is the U.S. Army Intelligence Center of Excellence. This is the definition of a conspiracy. The only question is, how far did this conspiracy go? Did the military actually break the law to try to influence the election for Donald Trump?